Today, Bill Cosby expressed regret in court. But hold on, let's discuss what he actually said before you start to gather your Kleenex. Was that a genuine moment of regret? Or was it something even more sinister than anyone had anticipated? Didn't simply say, sorry, he dropped a bombshell that's shaking the entertainment industry to its core. Who did Cosby snitch on? Prepare yourself for this. Are you wondering? To put it mildly, the man who used to portray America's father is now acting as the ultimate informant. And the larger-than-you-think group of people he is going to bring down with him, this goes beyond his legacy or conviction. Hollywood's dark secrets are being revealed more quickly than you can say. Pops of Jell-O pudding. Cosby's apology went beyond a heartfelt admission. It was his final effort to protect himself. He is now blaming his label and their dubious activities. Here's the question, though. Why now? What's the reason for the apology? What is the reason for the snitching? What's actually happening in the courtroom? And why does it seem like the darkest plot in Hollywood is finally coming to a head? You won't believe what's going to be revealed, I promise. The man who formerly appeared on television screens as America's dad has become the biggest scandal in Hollywood after being a beloved TV legend. However, what transpired in that courtroom after Cosby's eventual apology? Was it an effort at atonement? Or was there something darker going on behind those eyes full of tears? The truth is much messier than you may imagine. So let's dig deep into the real story. At first glance, it appears to be the last installment of Cosby's criminal history. A decades-lengthy career came to an end along with a punishment and an apology in court. However, Cosby is attempting to conceal something sinister, startling, and hazardous beneath the surface. He's not simply taking the fall himself this time either. Cosby, Bill, winced. He put everyone under the bus. And by that I mean he snitched his label and others who helped him maintain his secrecy for many years. All of them are now at risk of being eliminated. However, why would Cosby, who fought his claims for years, decide to come forward as a whistleblower? Is it a matter of survival, guilt, or desperation? Let's dissect this because, although Cosby's court apologies mark the start of the unraveling, it's leading to something far more serious. You won't believe how quickly the chain of events that began in that courtroom is about to blow up. Let's set the scene before we get into the drama of the apology. Not only was Bill Cosby a gifted comic, but he also became America's father. He established an empire. An empire built on charisma, trust, and a well-cultivated public persona. Cosby represented family-friendly television for many years. He was regarded as a good, moral man who supported family values and education. But there was a different narrative behind the Jell-O commercials and the smiles. Cosby wasn't merely acting as a father figure, he was the master of the puppets. Furthermore, puppet masters in Hollywood are in charge of the entire game. They do more than just pull strings. Connections were the foundation of Cosby's success. Being hilarious wasn't the only factor in his rise. It was about aligning himself with the proper people in the entertainment sector by exploiting his power. He had access to influential people such as directors, producers, and well-known celebrities, who ensured that his reputation would never be damaged. Untouchable, however, is not permanent. And the fissures appeared, till the truth about Cosby's decades-long abuse came to light. Rumors about his dark side began to circulate, but no one dared to speak up. The accusations were frightening, but the degree of Hollywood's protection for him was even more startling. What then caused Cosby to abruptly decide to issue an apology in court? Was it a premeditated action or a sincere moment of regret? Cosby's apology wasn't really a sincere admission of guilt, after all. Oh no. It was a calculated attempt to preserve himself and give the impression that he was a man who was now taking responsibility for his actions. Here's the problem, though. Cosby wasn't saying he was sorry for everything. He wasn't saying he was. sorry for the years his victims suffered, the lives he wrecked, or the trauma he caused. No, Cosby's apology was a charade, an attempt to draw attention to his co-conspirators rather than his misdeeds. The full story starts at that point. Because Cosby did more than simply apologize in his courtroom remarks. He winced. Not on his own initiative. It would have been too simple. No. Rather, he revealed those who assisted him in maintaining his empire. He is now being blamed by his label, the same people who shielded him, concealed his wrongdoings, and assisted him in preserving his reputation. Cosby's abrupt shift in approach wasn't a haphazard choice. It was the outcome of survival and strain, inclination, as well as a desperate attempt to remain current. Cosby isn't merely acknowledging his transgressions when he apologizes in court and throws his label under the bus. He is preparing for a much more significant confrontation. Who exactly is Cosby spying on? Cosby's record label isn't a minor band. We are discussing major figures in the entertainment sector. These individuals have participated in the cover-up for many years. To what extent does this go? It's deeper than you might imagine, though. Cosby's label helped him keep up a flawless public persona for years by protecting him from accusations, compensating victims, and abusing their authority to stifle rumors that might harm his reputation. However, Cosby is now betraying them and bringing the people who aided him to the top to light. And it goes beyond retaliation. It's a matter of survival. Cosby's snitching exposes a whole system that has long let influential figures in Hollywood get away with mistreatment, control, and manipulation. And it becomes increasingly clear that Cosby wasn't the only one who did this. There are more victims and industry participants out there who are finally seeing their opportunity to expose the truth. When it was revealed that Cosby had figured out his label, the public's response was quick and unflattering. People on social media were divided between being furious over Cosby's abrupt betrayal and wondering who else will be pulled into the issue, even if Cosby's decline had already been a breathtaking sight. It suddenly appeared as though the whole Hollywood apparatus was beginning to collapse. Outside the courts, protesters were yelling, "Justice for the victims." Behind the scenes, the discussions were becoming even more heated as people asked who else was involved, who helped Cosby maintain his empire. And why did Cosby choose now to expose everything? Insiders in Hollywood started to speak, and rumors of long-buried secrets began to surface. Cosby wasn't the exclusive focus anymore. It was the shady little secret of Hollywood, a system that had for decades permitted influential people like Cosby to misuse their position of power. However, the public was not the only group responding. The exact individuals Cosby spied on, his label, were frantically trying to control the damage. Damage control crews were placed on standby, and attorneys were summoned. However much money they spent on fabricating the story, the reality was already beginning to come to light. And after that, there isn't returning. It was more than simply a man who had been apprehended when Bill Cosby put his label under the bus. No, this has to do with something far more significant. And believe me, it wasn't just a quick public response. It was explosive. The startling disclosures that Cosby made were no longer merely news stories. Hollywood was trembling because of these burning firearms. Once the untouchable TV star, Cosby was now the most despised snitch in America. The man who had once served as a father figure, uniting families, was now destroying the same institution that had made him famous. What was the outcome? Hollywood's private affairs are being made public for the world to observe. The public was unaware of what had happened to them. Let's go back. There was more to Cosby's apology than just a publicity stunt. Throwing his label into the fire was a calculated move. The apology wasn't the point. It has to do with the damage control that was already taking place in the background. Why Cosby chose to come forward and then the leak started was the main question. When Cosby's apology made headlines, Everyone's attention was on him. However, the true mayhem was taking place behind the scenes. Details on the label's involvement in concealment started to surface from anonymous sources. Cosby's offenses, let's just say that the truth got more repulsive the further we dug. There were rumors that Cosby was assisted in maintaining his image by influential people in the industry during meetings that took place in the back rooms of Hollywood's most exclusive circles. Here's the worst part, though. She wasn't given a free pass by these people. They were deliberately trying to keep his secrets hidden behind closed doors. According to sources, these numbers were used for purposes other than star protection. The system that had kept them untouchable for so long was what they were trying to defend. Bribes were given and received, and Cosby's label evolved beyond a simple record label. It turned as a catalyst for a poisonous culture. What's the big secret then? Cosby's label was guilty of more than just hiding what he did. They took an active part in keeping the truth from being revealed. Yes, exactly. The crime committed by one guy is not the only one. It concerns a whole network of Hollywood elites who have been defending one another for years by abusing their influence and authority. Cosby's snitching was more than just a betrayal of the people who helped make him famous, either. It was a last-ditch effort to protect his own reputation. As he ran out of legal options, he came to the conclusion that his greatest hope of regaining some control was to expose those who had assisted him. Was it sufficient, though? Would his disclosures be sufficient to topple the system as a whole? The public's reaction was like seeing slow-motion pyrotechnics. Social media was inundated with people refuting the well-constructed public persona that Cosby had spent decades cultivating. Conversations were becoming louder as hashtags like #CosbyX exposed and #Hollywood cover-up started to trend internationally. This is where things become even more intriguing, though. Hollywood wasn't simply letting the media enjoy themselves, okay? No, the authorities were rushing. Teams responsible for damage control went into overdrive after realizing the extent of the situation. However, they could not simply hide this. The floodgates had been unleashed by Cosby's snitch, and Cosby's apology wasn't the only thing that caught the public's attention. They were curious about the other parties. Consider it. It wasn't just his label that Cosby was accusing. He was making accusations against a group of elites who had assisted him in holding on to power for many years. Let's just say that the list is broader than you may imagine. The actual question was, who's next? Who else in Hollywood is complicit in this cover-up? As more information came to light, it became evident that this conspiracy was not limited to Cosby's label. Other well-known Hollywood personalities, whose names you might recognize, began to surface in the rumors. Some were even connected to dubious financial transactions with Cosby's group. The next major scandal that might topple an entire institution was then the subject of rumors. Cosby's record business was in crisis mode as the impact grew. Crisis managers started to twist the story. Legal teams were called in, and public relations specialists were consulted. However hard they attempted to rebrand, the harm was already done. There was no turning back once the truth had been revealed. The label wasn't merely a passive participant in this cover-up, which is a huge shock. One of the key actors behind the scenes was Cosby's label, which planned the cover-up with the assistance of influential Hollywood insiders. They tried everything, including smear campaigns and payoffs, to keep the victims quiet and preserve Cosby's empire. The world was watching now, though. Hollywood's elites were beginning to feel the heat as the roles had been reversed. It was only a question of time until other people began speaking up if Cosby was revealing the system. The pressure was growing, and whistleblowers were already coming forward with their own tales. Here we are. Then, there was more to Cosby's snitching than a single man's remorse. The goal is to expose a decades-old system of corruption. It's about exposing the ways in which Hollywood's elites have manipulated the facts, shaped the story, and shielded one another from the law. What comes next is the question today. The beginnings of a larger scandal have been revealed. But who else will be brought down with Cosby? Who is responsible for creating this poisonous atmosphere? The last and scariest question is this the beginning? Secrets will inevitably surface as more people begin to speak. Come on out. This narrative is far from ended, even if Cosby may have set off the chain of events. The bombshells continue to fall, and the fallout from Bill Cosby's surprise snitching and courtroom apology is catching on like wildfire. What began as a straightforward apology has now descended into a full-scale conflict within Hollywood. The influential people who once controlled the entertainment business with an iron hand are now frantically trying to hide their tracks after the public spoke. Cosby's conviction was seen by the world as the end. A fall from grace, a punishment, and an apology. In actuality, however, it was just the start of the end for a system that has for far too long concealed its most sinister truths. And there's no going back now that the floodgates have opened. Let's briefly discuss the legal ramifications. Because Cosby's life sentence isn't the only consequence of this. That's the least of his concerns now. He's afraid. Cosby might have believed that he could avoid the worst of it by apologizing and snitching on his label. He is unaware, however, that the harm is far more extensive and that he will be plagued by legal issues for the rest of his life. You see, it's like opening a Pandora's box once the truth is out. Furthermore, Cosby's apology went beyond simply being honest. The goal was to assign blame to others in order to avoid facing more legal repercussions. However, by doing this, he set off an unstoppable chain reaction. Investigations by the federal government are now possible. There may shortly be congressional hearings. Additionally, fresh legal actions are being contemplated. The label that Cosby spied on won't just sit back and let the public think they were innocent in this whole situation. They will fight back. Oh dear. Cosby won't be the only one who suffers the repercussions of the intense litigation. He was able to maintain his dominance thanks to the entire network. The legal ramifications are getting worse every day. It's becoming increasingly evident that this crisis is far from over, as new information emerges and more people come forward with information. The entertainment industry will be completely different when it all falls apart, and we're only just starting to witness the top of the iceberg. But Hollywood is being rocked by more than just the legal repercussions. There is a strong public backlash. As a result of his snitching, Cosby has become a pariah. But the truth is that he has now brought down some of Hollywood's biggest personalities. An increasing number of influential people are being brought into the spotlight as the investigations into Cosby's label intensify. And in actuality, nobody is safe anymore, even though some people might have thought they were. The heat on Hollywood's elite is growing as they are being scrutinized more than ever before. People are furious, more than ever. The victims of Cosby's assault are speaking up and calling for justice not only for Cosby's crimes, but also for the entire system that allowed him to evade responsibility for so long. The public views Cosby's courtroom apologies as a final act of betrayal, even though it may have appeared to be an attempt at redemption. Yes, he cheated on his label, but he also violated the confidence of millions of his former admirers. There is such strong public outrage that demonstrators have gathered in the streets to chant for the victims' justice. Calls for responsibility are rife on social media, and signs demanding answers are being displayed. Formerly silent Hollywood celebrities are now stepping up and joining the increasing clamor of justice, while others who once backed Cosby are now frantically trying to disassociate themselves from the issue. Not to be overlooked is the media. Journalists and pundits are already analyzing the narrative around Cosby's apologies. News outlets are scrambling to cover every new development as the media's long-standing role in shielding Cosby comes under intense scrutiny. The tale is getting widely shared and widespread. and Cosby's snitching is garnering international attention. Now that the public is aware of Hollywood's dark secrets, a thorough inquiry into the unethical practices of the industry is possible. Don't believe that Cosby's snitching is the last piece of information. The fight is far from over, even though Cosby may have put his label under the bus. The murky web of Hollywood's elite is starting to come apart as more insiders and whistleblowers come out. The label Cosby War was only one factor. What if this controversy involves even more powerful individuals? What if Cosby's apology is only the first in a series of events that lead to some of the most well-known figures in the entertainment sector? People are already accusing other powerful figures in Hollywood of collusion in assisting Cosby in retaining his position of authority. The question is not only who assisted Cosby, but also the extent of the corruption. Who else is controlling the situation from behind the scenes to prevent the truth from being revealed? These inquiries are only becoming more prevalent. Furthermore, it's difficult to forecast the extent of the consequences now that the floodgates have been opened. But there's no denying that Cosby's downfall serves as a prelude to something much more significant. Now that the entire system that shielded him is being revealed, the repercussions are going to have a broad impact. Hollywood's dark secrets are being exposed for everyone to see, and the scandals are only just starting to come to light. Nobody is going to run away and get hurt because the truth is finally coming out. This brings us to the last query. Is Cosby ever going to be free? Even after receiving his sentence, he still has legal issues to deal with. The likelihood of Cosby staying behind bars is decreasing as more information becomes available and more investigations are conducted. But behind the scenes, who is in charge? Will Cosby's courtroom apology be the last straw for him? Or will it mark the beginning of a wider plot that involves more than just him? The public outrage will only intensify as more people come forward and more shocking information is revealed. The truth will eventually be out, and the elite of Hollywood will have nowhere to hide. Who will come forward after Cosby, who may have snitched on his label? Who will be the next to reveal secrets in Hollywood? You can bet that the facts will be far more repulsive than any of us as this controversy develops anticipated.